I did have a question. I saw the beginning time. I didn't see the ending time. Do you know about how long,
Yeah,
Anna?
we're shooting for about 45 minutes for an hour on the outside, but we're
Oh,
flexible. And also, I'm recording this, so it will also be up on our Vimeo page. So if you didn't catch it, or if you have to go, you can catch the rest of it on that recording.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, Anna, take it away.
Awesome. Great question. Well, hi, hello, welcome everybody. Thank you for taking this time to learn how to embroider with us. I'm excited to have y'all here and share my drawings with y'all and some awesome knowledge that has been in my family, and I'm sure probably all of our families. And that's how I learned, just watching my grandmas and aunts doing it. So I'm excited to be here with y'all and to show y'all some simple stitches and how you can apply them to your own drawings. So let's get started. So right here, I'm gonna have these examples for y'all, and I'll be going over them. And these are pretty simple ones that you can apply to any type of drawing that you might have, whether it's, you know, line work, being able to trace something, maybe words. For right now, this is going to be the drawing I'm going to be working on. And I started the frame just because it gets a little repetitive, so we'll get into that. But let's start off with our materials. So first, you need a needle. And so your needle, you'll Hobby Lobby has them, and they'll say embroidery needles. And they have a nice little end to them, so you can get your thread through them. So you'll need to get your needle and then a thread you want to work with. I'm going to start off with probably this thread. And with threading, a thread comes with 6 strings in it. So if you're doing very small, delicate details, you can separate your thread, and you can do, instead of 6, you can do 3, you can do 2. But I'm just going to start off with the whole thread because I'm just going to go through these examples with y'all, and I'll be naming them and seeing how I'll be applying them to my own drawing. So we'll start with our thread, and in one end you want to put a knot through it because it's going to be the bottom. This is going to go through the bottom and it'll hold the thread in. And you just want to do a nice little simple knot. So that'll be one end. And then this is the other end, which you'll be threading. And what I do, I will lick both my fingers and then press them together so they're nice and tight and they're able to go through the hole. And then you'll get your needle. And then if it's not pressing too much, sometimes I'll put it in my mouth and I'll kind of just try to press it on a little bit more. Because sometimes they are very difficult to put through. See? And then you push through with your fingers. Oh, see, I missed one string. So I'll try that again. And usually I'll get my nail and I'll press them together like that, and that really helps. And then there you go, and you press through. Oh, missed another one again. I think this one will be it. Yes. And there. And then you pull them through, and you want to have a good amount pulled through, probably like 5 to 6 inches, just so whenever you're pulling, you don't accidentally, pull through and then you have to thread your needle all over again. So have a nice amount of thread pulled through, and then we'll start with our first example, which is the running stitch. And the running stitch, you'll just, let me go through fabrics. Actually, I forgot to go through this fabric I'm using. This is embroidery fabric. It's your typical fabric that they'll sell for embroidery. And this one, it has a grid to it. So if you look closely, you can see all the grid that they have, and it's really nice for structured lines. And if you have like very, you know, geometric figures, this is really nice for that, because you can follow this grid pattern that they have for you, and it's very sturdy as well. So I like using this fabric for like patches. I actually have one example here that I'll be cutting off and doing as a patch. So this is a really good starter fabric for any type of drawing you're doing, because it gives you those lines and those dots that you can follow very easily. So let's get started with the running stitch. So what you want to do is you want to go through the bottom up and find your hole, and you'll go through it. And depending on how thick you want them, I usually go the size of a grain of rice. So I'll skip one and then go to the second one, because that's the nice little size if it's a line you're going through. And then you'll skip one and then go to the other hole, and then do another grain of rice. And then you just repeat that action and go from the bottom and then up through a grain of rice and then back to the bottom. And with this fabric, I'm actually not using a hoop, because this is very sturdy and it keeps its form really well. If you're using other fabrics, maybe like cotton or canvas, you do want to use a hoop, because it's really helpful to have your drawing in place and not move it. So I'll have this one for it. But for right now, I'm just doing the examples. So this is going to be the running stitch. And that's really nice for lining your work, framing your work. You can really use this for a lot of different types of things that you can go closer together, and you'll see it throughout the other examples, how you can kind of combine that technique and form a new line or a new pattern. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tie that up. And how you finish that off, you do a little hoop, and you'll put your needle through it, and you'll knot it off, and you'll pull through that hoop and have it tight onto the fabric, and just hold your finger down, because that will help it stay tight. And then you'll just pull your thread, and then you have a nice little knot. Sometimes you can double knot it just to like have it secure, but it's up to you how many knots you want to give it. And then you have your scissors, and you want to cut it. And you don't want to leave too much, because then this can get wrapped up into your other threads while you're doing your embroidery. So you want to give it a nice little, probably like not too much, not too little, you know, just a good little amount will do. And so that's your running stitch. The next one we're going to do is the cross stitch. On this one, you'll see I already started it, and they're very small X's is pretty much what they are. I'm going to do them a little bit bigger just so you can see them a little bit better. So what you'll do is, in this one, you'll start from a corner. I'll start from here, from this corner, from bottom up. And then I'll go diagonal to it. And what's good about here is it's giving you a really nice square that you can work with. And with other fabrics like cotton or canvas, you don't really have these prominent holes there. So your X's will be a little wonky, but there's nothing wrong with that. I love, you know, having more loose X's, maybe like this one. You know, I just followed my own pattern, but this really helps to give you that grid, which is really nice. So you'll go across, you can count your dots, 1, 2. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go across to this corner and then pull up and then go to this corner and go down. And this is your cross stitch. And depending on how close you want them, you know, if you want them really close, you can just go right next to it, or you can go to this next opening that there is. How close you have them will depend how nice and even your border will be, or your flowers. You know, a lot of people will do cross stitching with flowers and they look really nice. And so you go across again, and then you'll start in the bottom corner. And you'll see like these really small ones. It's the same thing, but I just used a smaller grid, the smaller square, and they kind of come up as looking like little circles, which is really nice. And so the bigger you get, the more detail you'll see through them. And so then there's that one, and then you'll go across, go up and bottom, and cross, and then bottom left corner. And so this grid really is super helpful to see that nice structure coming along. And see, there you have your cross stitch. Let me do one more. And you'll start top left, and bottom, and that's your cross stitch. And then we'll do that again. We'll close it off, and you do the loop, little loop, and then put your needle through it, and then you want to tighten it to the bottom, and then pull this thread up, and it'll be nice and snug to the fabric. And we'll cut that. And that was our cross stitch. The next one we're gonna work on is our split stitch. This one it's similar to this, but they're gonna be closer together, and you're gonna be coming up from the middle. So let's start that one. That one's really nice. It starts looking a little bit like a chain. So you can use that for, you know, stems of flowers, or any type of lining, like words that you want to line. And so we'll start off in one hole, and you'll go across again as the length of a grain of rice is fine. And you'll eyeball it. Eventually, the more you do it, you'll see what size you really enjoy and which one you want to keep doing. And so what we're going to do here is that we're going to go through the stitch we just did right in the middle of it. I don't know if you can see it. Let's see. So you're going to go right through the middle of it. So you're going to split it. That's why it's called the split stitch. You're going to split it in half. You're going to pull through, and oops. So that happened because I have other threads going crazy right now next to it. And so that's why it's important to cut your threads. Something I didn't do. It's okay. You can just pull through, and then I'll go back to where it was. So this is now coming from the middle of the stitch we just did, and then you're going to come across. So here I can either go to this next hole, or I can go to the following one, depending, you know, how long I want my stitches to be. But I want this one to be nice and snug together, so I'll just go to the next hole that's next, and then I'll do that. And the same thing, I want to go through the middle of the stitch I just did, and I'll split in half, and I'll pull through, and then I'll do farther out so we can have a little bit of everything. So I went to the next hole, I put it through, and I come back up, splitting the stitch I just did. I'm splitting it in half. Let's see. And then I'm going across again into a new hole, and then going back. So you're constantly going forward and then back, forward and back. So I just went forward. Now I'm going back to split the stitch I just did in half and pull through. Again, I'm going forward a little bit, the size of a grain of rice, and then going back to split it in half. And then you'll start seeing how it starts kind of looking like a braid, a nice little chain. And it's really nice. You can frame things with this line. You can get very creative and it can turn into really great things. It can be also a filler if you want to fill up some space. And so this we're working on is the split stitch, and we'll finish that one off. Again, we'll do a little loop. We'll put our needle through, pull it, and make it go snug to the fabric. Put your finger down and pull through. Awesome. So now the next one that we're going to work on is the back stitch. This one is the one I use a lot just because it's nice and simple, and it gives you just a very nice line if you want to, you know, if you're just trying to make a border or just follow a shape. Like you can see in this one, a lot of this is just the back stitch that I framed this pot with. I framed the frame with. It just gives you a nice little line, and I use that one a lot. And it can, all these stitches, the more you use them, you can really like turn them into their own patterns and forms, and they'll take up their own forms really nicely. Okay, so now we're gonna do the back stitch. So how the back stitch works is you'll go through from the bottom up, and say I want to start in this hole, I'm going to go a little bit forward, and I'm going to work back. So I'm going to go 2 back, and then I'm going to go forward again, and I'm going to start where I left off in the forward stitch. So right here, that's where I'm going to come back through. Oops. So in this case, my needle went through the knot I made, which is fine. I just undo that. And that can happen. Sometimes you can go through the knot you made if you're going through the same hole. And so now I have to rethread, which is fine. Sometimes your needle can go through the knot and it'll pull it up like it just happened. But you can just undo it. And the great thing about all this is that thread is always getting all messy and knotted, so you get to be an expert on knotting. And so we'll start over. So we'll start forward where we wanted. So if I wanted to start here, I'll start a little bit forward, and I'll go backwards. And I'll start forward, and I'll go forward now, starting in the beginning, and I'll be going forward like that. And I'll go forward again, and then I'm going back. So it's called the back stitch because you're going to form your line, you're going backwards, right? So then it's all connected. And then I'll go forward. And then I'll start going backwards. And these I made them a little longer, which is fine. And then I'll go forward. Yes.
And I'm not sure if anyone else is having that. Your picture keeps going in and out with Karen. I don't know what's causing that, whether, is anybody else seeing that?
Let's see.
No, I'm not. That's interesting. It should be, her video should be pinned. Maybe let me try spotlighting it. Maybe that'll make a difference. Is that helping?
Yeah, I can see it now. It's just that when she's talking, I can hear her talking, but the video keeps showing Karen's name and then it goes back to hers.
I just muted her, I think.
Ah, okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I muted it.
Okay.
Okay, keep at it. So, I think we're okay. Oh, hold on. Unmute. Wait, I messed up. Now I can't unmute you. Hold on. Sorry.
Unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, that was my fault.
Awesome.
Sorry.
It's okay. Awesome. So let's get back to the backstitch. That's funny. So yeah, so the backstitch is called that because you're going forward and then backwards, forward and then backwards. So then you can have all your stitches go hand in hand, connecting with each other. And so I left off going in the backward position. So now I'm going to go forward. We're going forward, and then I'll go forward where I'm going again, and then I'll go backwards. And so you're kind of repeating this motion over and over again, and you're going backwards, so then you're able to have the stitches completely connect and not have any open spots, like maybe the running stitch. The running, you're going forward the whole time because you're able to skip those. And this one you're going backwards, so then you're able to start from where you left off and have a straight line. And so yeah, that is the back stitch, and we'll knot it up, finish it off, do a little loop, and then tie it. You can put your finger down so you have it nice and hugged onto the fabric. And so the next one is called the French knot, and these are really nice for small details that you want to add to anything. I really like using them for like the sky. I like if I want to add like stars or little dots around it. These are really a nice, really nice, pretty touch to the frame that you have going on. And these are really nice. It's really simple. You just go from the bottom up again. And what you end up doing is you just truly just make a knot. You'll make a little knot. Like you usually knot from the back, it's just a knot. And the bigger you want it, the more knots you can do. So if you want to do 2 knots or 3 knots, that will make the little circle a lot bigger. This is just one, and I'll show you the more knots I do. This is just 1 knot, so you knotted it, and then you're going to go back through. And you don't want to go back through the same hole you went up with. You just want to go right next to it. And you have a nice little dot. And then we'll do another one with 2 knots and see how much bigger that one gets. And so what we'll do is do a little loop, put your needle through, and you want to have it nice and taut to the top of your fabric, and have your finger down. And then we're going to do 2. So we'll do another one, and have your finger down and have it nice and tight. Because I've caught myself where I just tie it and the knot's like up here on the string. So you want to make sure you move it all the way down. And so this is 2 knots, and then I'll go back down, not through the same hole, but just one right next to it. And there's a nice little French knot. Oh. And then we'll knot it again, finish it off to a nice little knot in the back, and then tie that up. And so that was the French knot. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go over part of the satin stitch. So then I'll start getting started on my drawing, so you can see how I apply these stitches to my drawing. So now let's do the satin stitch, which this one is very nice and simple, and I really love using it for borders because it gives you a nice thick border, and I use a lot of borders in my drawing, so they end up really really thick and give you a really nice line. So this one is the Satin Stitch. You can see around there. So I'm getting another thread because I ran out. So I get this one. And I'm going to thread my needle again. And I'm going to use all 6 threads for this one because it gives you a nice little thickness to it. So I'm going to put it in my mouth and then just press it on. And then put through my needle. Give you a good length of it. So I did mine like right there, maybe half of what I have in total. And let's do the Satin Stitch. So the Satin Stitch is really, you are doing repetitive lines right next to each other. So we'll go through the bottom up. And I want to do mine just a nice grain of rice because I really like that size. So which ends up, if you count these holes, it ends up being 3 holes that it goes through. And so we have that line, and I go right next to it and to the next hole, and then go up that one and then down the top one. And you want to go through it right next to it. So I don't want to start down here because then you're just wasting thread. You want to go right next to it, which is going to be right here. And then down. And in this fabric, you can see because of the grid, you get a lot of space through them. So if you don't have to follow the grid, I can, if I want them closer together, I can make my own hole before that one and put it right next to it. And then go down and they'll be a little closer. Or you can, give it space. Like in these ones, I gave them a little bit more space. So it really depends how your drawing is and how you want to execute it. And then, yeah, you'll repeat this pattern and rhythm throughout. And then that's your Satin Stitch that we got done. So I'm going to start applying these stitches to my drawing so we can start seeing how these can really come to life, and you can use them in different ways. Do y'all want to see any other stitchings I didn't do? This one is a star one. This one is just a diagonal one that goes across. Let me get it closer. That goes across. This one's a stem one. Do y'all want me to go through any other ones that y'all would like to use for y'all's drawings? Or is it okay if I go on with mine?
I'd like to see the star one.
The star one? Cool. I'll do that one. Yeah, I really like that one. And it's really nice because all it really is, you're just going, centering it. I'm going to thread my nail real quick. All you're doing is you're going to center them all around one specific hole, and it turns into a beautiful little star. Okay. So what we do with the star stitch is you want to see what your center is going to be. So I'm going to pick this one as my center, and everything is going to grow out of this one center. And it depends how big you want them. These, I made them to go across. I see 1, 2. I went over 2 dots. But I want to do a little bit bigger just because we're on screens and so you can see it better. So I'm going to go across 3. So I'm going to go across 3, and then I'm going to go on to my next one, which is a little bit above it. I'm going to skip that one and do right in the middle. So you don't have to follow the grid. That you can kind of come up with your own spaces if you don't want to follow the grid. So I'm going to, got knot in. So I went up to this one, and it's kind of halfway between that. And then I'm going to go back to the middle. And then I'm going to go to the top one. It's right across from the the center point, and then I'm going to go down the center. So everything's going to meet right in the center, and you're just kind of going around it. And then my next one is I'm going to create my own hole right in the middle, and then go back into the center. And then I'm going to go now across over 3, and then go back in the middle. And what I did in these other ones, I left some of them halfway, which you can do because halfway is really nice to create like a nice little triangle shape. And then, or you can go all around, and we'll go all around. And so then I'll meet in the middle of these 2 dots. And then back in the center. And then now the bottom one. Then back in the center. And then, oh, yeah. And then we'll go and meet right in the middle of those 2 lines we made. Right here. And then right in the middle. And there is your star stitch. And again, you can leave them halfway if you want. You can make them bigger or smaller. And that's your star stitch. And we'll close this one off. And we'll get started on applying these to the drawing I have. So let's do that. So with this one, you can see I already started the border just because it gets really repetitive. So I wanted to start that off first so I can finish that off and start off into the middle image. So this is a satin stitch that I have going around, and you can see that I chose probably 3 dots to go through just for the thickness. I like that thickness, and I'll use this thread that I have going. And what helps a lot sometimes is to, if your thread, like you can tell mine's kind of been used a lot, you can cut it. And if you cut it diagonally, it's a little easier for you to thread because you're giving it that angle that will go smoother through the needle hole.
Hey, Anna, do you think there's any value to showing people just how to put the fabric in the hoop?
Oh, yeah. That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, so with your hoop, it comes in 2 parts. The bottom part this is the top part because you'll be able to, make it bigger or smaller. You want to open it up so you can put it on there easily. So you want to move this dial all the way through so it can open. You'll put this one in the bottom of your fabric and then apply this one onto it. And it will just slip in nice, and if you have it all the way up, open, it should slip nice onto it. And then you'll just tighten it, and that will help it snug and hug the one in the bottom. And you just want to get as tight as you can. And then you want to stretch out your fabric a little bit just so it's nice and taut on there, and you can work a little bit better. And you just pull on the sides a little bit, and then I'll have your image right there ready for you to work on. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That completely went over my head. Okay, so now I'm gonna thread my needle. And I'm gonna leave a little bit, like 6 inches on there. And I'll finish this border with y'all. And this is the back of it. So it's nice to see the back and see how you're doing. You wanna keep it as clean as possible because sometimes it will get caught with your thread if you have some extra thread going on. Oh, look what I did. It went through the hoop, which is fine. You just push it back out, put your thread over it, And then sometimes I'll probably have to, oh no, sometimes it'll click back in. Yep. So it clicked back in and now I'm free to use it. There you go. So yeah, you want to keep the back nice and clean. And so I left off on this side. So I want to start on the same side I left off on, which is the left side. And then I'm just going to do that same pattern. This one is called the Satin Stitch. And you're going to just go across and then up over onto the same side, onto the left. And it's really nice to get some repetitiveness going on, because then you practice the same stitching over and over again. It gets really nice and meditative, and you start seeing like how the thread is working for you and what you enjoy, if you like it, you know, to be closer together or farther apart. You start seeing little details that will then drive you to creating your own style. So with the border, I really started falling in love with it just because it would frame my drawings really well, and I couldn't figure out how to do a border. I was like, how can I frame my images better? And I saw that the satin stitch really gave you that nice thickness and gave you a nice, just in general, a nice frame, because you're just doing lines over and over again. And so in this, I can get it closer if I want the border to be a little bit, what's the word? A little bit more, you know, together, because you could see in, because I'm just following the grid on this fabric, and it's giving you space between each stitching, but I can make them closer to give a feeling of more of a line, a thick line. And so here you start seeing that it starts getting a little thicker. And then I'm going to go back to how I had it.
I'm curious about your drawing. What are we looking at in your drawing here?
Yeah, so let me finish that up. So now that I have that border, the drawing is a pot that I drew. So let's start on that pot. The pot, you can see it's a nice little simple figure. In the middle is a little star I did, so we can follow that same stitching for the star. And these little lines around it, I'll probably use maybe the cross stitch or the back stitch to that. So I'll start off, this is the color I'm going to use for the pot. And the amount that you want to get as thread is probably your arm's length. You want to measure your arm, and that usually is a very good length to have for your thread, because then you don't have any going to waste, or if you need more, you just get a little bit more. And I'll get that threaded.
Because it gets hard to work with if it's too long, right?
Yeah, if it gets too long, it'll start getting really knotted up with the motion that you're going through, and it's kind of hard to work with if it's too long. And sometimes I used to just do really long, so I wouldn't have to like rethread and do all the work, and I would always regret it. So what I'm going to start in the top corner, and I'm going to go from bottom up, and I'm going to go, so depending, this is a straight line, so you can do it however length you want because you're going straight. Once you get curves, you want to do your stitches a little smaller so you can get that nice curve and not it be angular because of the line work. So here I can go as long as I want because it is just a line. And for this, I'm doing the back stitch. So I'm going forward and then backwards. And then I'm going forward and then backwards. And so that's the thing about straight lines, you can go as far out as you can. But then once you start going getting a little curve in your line, that's when you want to start getting small. So here you see that I'm going to start doing a smaller stitch, so then it can go with the wave of the line. And that
Do
really
you
helps
draw,
you.
excuse me,
Yeah.
do you draw it with just a pencil on the fabric itself?
Yeah, so you can do a pencil, you can do a pen, you can really work with whatever you have. I like doing pencil just because it's nice and smooth and you don't really see like the harshness of a pen or a marker. So a pencil is always really good to work with. Also, they have these markers at Hobby Lobby that are like, if you have black fabric or any other color fabric, it's white ink or purple ink, and it's washable. And so you can use those to draw onto your fabric. Or you can also, what I use is the window sometimes to transfer my drawings onto. And I'll use a really slight, soft pencil onto the fabric. And that allows me to transfer it with the light, and the pencil just eventually comes off.
So how many threads are you using on that? Is it 6 threads?
Yeah, so on this one, it's 6 threads. And I'm using 6 threads just because it's the lining of it. And so I want a nice, nice thickness and a nice line to form the pot. Later on, once I do this top, I'll probably do 3 threads because it's just very small details I want to hit on. Then I'll probably use, a smaller, a thinner size thread. So I can go down to 1 if you really want to, or 2. But usually 3 will do the trick if you're working on small details. And so this is what's really great about the back stitch, that it's giving you a nice firm line that connects. And you want to go back. When you go back, you want to go back into the hole that you came out of, so then it connects nicely like that. So you want to go right back into where you left off on the last stitch. And then if your thread starts getting shorter and shorter, you can just loosen up this thread that you have going on. So mine's starting to get really close to it. So I'll just pull it out a little bit. You don't want it too short either. So once you start getting like over here, you do want to start getting a new thread. But right now, I just start pulling it. So then I have a little bit more to work with. And now that's curving. I want to do smaller stitches so it can follow that nice curvature of the line and not look too angular. And then now that I'm back on the straight, I can do a little longer stitches. into. And so this top circle is the top of the pot where I want to close it off. And so because this is very, it's not a straight line, it's very circular. So I want to follow this with a very small stitching so it's able to have that nice curve to it. So I'll probably be doing every dot. Right there. So here where it curves, I want to do really small stitches. And so there's the top of the pot. And so we'll close that off. And we'll do the same thing. You'll do a little loop and put your needle through it. And then have it nice and taut on the fabric, and then you pull. And so that was the back stitch that we just did to form the pot. Now let's do this star in the middle. And that one, I'll probably do a nice orange. And that one's gonna be the star stitch. And this one's just really big, so we'll be able to see how it looks on a bigger scale. And you put you give it a knot at the end. And you want to have your knot as much as at the end as the thread as you can get it, because then that will be loose thread that will be hanging out to get knotted with your other thread. So if there's a lot of excess, you can cut a little bit just so it doesn't get too much in your way. And then we'll thread my needle. And then we'll start on the star. So I want to find my middle point that I want to focus on, and I think it's going to be right there. That's going to be my middle point that I'm going to be going back towards. And I'll start going from the top and then going clockwise. And with this star, I can add a lot more lines to it because it is bigger. So I'll probably add a couple extra lines to the side of it. And you just want to copy it. So if I have two dots up there, then I want to have the same line going through that one line. So then it's a little structured in the bottom as much as it is as the top. But if it's a little wonky, that's cool too, because then it gives it character. And then I skipped one, so that's the one I'm going to skip. So now I'm going to go to this one. Go through the middle, and then I'll go do my bottom one, and I'm just figuring out, okay, this one is in this line, so I just go down and make sure it's in the same line and go through that back to the middle. And this is when the grid really comes in handy, when you're doing stuff like this where you want to get it all kind of in the same structure and nice and even. The grid really helps you line your work up together, because what I'm doing is I'm just like seeing, oh, this is in this line, so I'm just going to go across, and then it's one under, just like this one is one under. So it's really helpful starting off with this embroidery fabric, because that grid can really help you draw up some really cool stuff. And then there's our middle star. And so you can tell, once the bigger you get, the more lines you can add. It's like this small one, you know, we were only working with so much space, and this one I was able to add a lot more lines to amplify the star. And so we'll close this one off. And so that was our star stitch. And now I'll work on these two lines. And those two lines, I can either do the running stitch or the cross stitch. I'll probably do the cross stitch just so I can, sorry, not the cross, the split stitch, because that one ends up looking like a really nice braid, which I really enjoy. So for that one, I'm going to use this green. And this one already has a knot at the end. So all I have to do is knot this end. But I'm going to cut it since it's not very, the end is kind of used up. And I did a little angle. And then I just press it down with my fingernail on my toe and my bottom of my finger, so I can get it nice and flat. And it can go into the hole a little easier. Once you get it through, you want to push forward with your fingernails. And so with these, we'll do the split stitch. And so this one I'll start right here from bottom up, and then I'll go across. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the middle and split them and go through that stitch I already did, and then go forward. And then again, I'm going to split that one in half. And because I'm curving down, I want to keep this stitch small. So I'm just going to go make a small little stitch forward, and then I'm going to split that one in half. And so that gives you a nice curvature rather than just a really straight line. And then I'll go across again, make it a small stitch, then split that one in half again. And then now that I'm going on a straight line, I can go a little bit further out and do a longer stitch. And then split this one in half and go further out. Split that in half again. Go back and split that. Go forward. And then go back and split. Go forward again. And then go back and split again. And here I'm going on a curve again, so I want to do a small stitch. Now let me split that. And do a small stitch again, so I can finish off that curve. And now that I'm going back on straight, I want to go out a little further. Since it's just a straight line, I'll cut that in half. And then there's that split stitch done. And we'll knot it up and cut it. Have it nice and tight on there. And pull through. Cut. And so there's the split stitch. And with that, because you curve through, it's really nice, and it'll give you a nice little braided look to that line. And then we'll do the bottom line. We'll do that one as a blue, so we can have a little bit of color and all. So we want to get arm's length of thread, not the bottom. And then press down your thread.
Is that 3 or 6 again?
So yeah, let me do 3 and see how the 3 looks. So with the 3, you just want to get it and split it right in half. And you'll see the threads kind of unfolding in themselves. So I'm going to split this, and you want to keep them hold, because if you just pull them, they'll get knotted into each other. So you want to hold this side and then just be spreading with your fingers all the way. And there you go. And so this is our 3-threaded thread. And we'll work with this one and see the difference, because it does give you a nice difference in the line work that you'll be doing, or any type of detail. And so I'll thread the needle, give it a good length, and then we'll do the bottom line. And the bottom line, we'll start off, and this one I'll probably we'll do the running stitch, which is a little more, it's the one that separates. So this went across because my knot was too small. So I'm going to double knot it. Let's triple knot it just to make sure it doesn't go through. And so you want to pull down the knot so it goes right over the one you already have. You just pull it through. So we'll start in the line that I have drawn up right there, from the bottom up. And we're going to go across. And this one's going to be a running stitch, so there's going to be some separation between each stitch. So I'm going to skip that one, and then because I'm doing a little curve, I'll do a smaller stitch again. And so right there, and back to straight, so I'll do a longer stitch. And you see that 3 threads, the difference that it has on your line. So if you want smaller, more daintier lines, the 3 really does give you that detail and that kind of small, less girthier line. And because we're gonna curve right here, I'm gonna do a smaller stitch. Small stitch again.
As you're finishing this up, does anybody have any questions that they'd like to have answered before we wrap everything up?
For the frame, did you use 6 threads also, or how many did you use for the frame?
Yeah, the frame was 6 threads I used. So it will give you that thicker line that I was talking about. So that's going to be 6 threads.
And Anna, you said you made these into patches and things?
Yeah, so what I end up doing, this one's done. So with this one, I'll cut it and I'll stitch the endings of it.
Okay, all right.
So I'll just fold it and stitch it, and then I'll add it to a jacket or a shirt, a bag. Yeah, and they work really great for patches because the material of the fabric is really thick and very sturdy. So they work really well for patches.
Maybe we need to do a hand embroidery 102 for
yes,
how to do finishing pieces up and then stitching them on other things and whatnot. That might be interesting.
Yeah, that'd be really great. Yeah, to see the application of him.
Yeah, because finishing up things is always like, that's something I always have a hard time with. Like, how do I do that correctly?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really lovely. And like I said, I really like that you work, you do your own drawings. I think that really adds an extra layer to the work for me.
Yeah, I hope this really pushes people to do their own drawings, and just whatever you have in your journal, you can bring it to life with embroidery and find really cool different ways to use stitch work to follow those doodles that you might have in your journal.
Yeah, that's excellent. Do you have a website that people can find you on, or Instagram, or are you selling work? I mean,
I have an Instagram. I'm working on my website. Hopefully I'll have it by the end of this month or starting next month. But I do have a website. My name is Anita Luz. So it's ANITALUZZ. So there, I share all my work. I'm a photographer as well, so I have a lot of images there, but I also share my embroidery work there. But hopefully soon I'll have a website that I'll be sharing with everyone with my embroidery work, because I do have a lot that I want to share with people and be able to embroider our doodles.
I love it. Well, if there's any last minute questions, if we don't have any of those, I think.
I really appreciate it, Anna. Thank you.
Yeah.
You need to think about version 2.
Yeah.
We definitely will.
Yeah, I think we should try to figure that out, Anna. That would be really fun, I think. Or
Yeah.
maybe just some more stitches, maybe just some more advanced stitches, and maybe just do another session like this.
Yeah, that'd be great. I would love to do that for
Okay.
sure.
Something like flowers, maybe.
Definitely we'll do some flower work.
Flowers are classics.
Yes, they are.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think then we'll sign off for now, but keep your eyes peeled, everyone out there, for maybe another hand embroidery session pretty soon.
Thank
Yes.
you. That was
Yeah,
really nice.
thank you
Thank
everyone.
you.
Great. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Anna. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.